afternoon. I'm not going to do roll today. I'll start on Tuesday just simply because of the drop ad. It's a lot of people coming and going, so hopefully after today we'll have class roster set. Okay, we're going to talk about today franchising and kind of talk about what it takes to be able to do a franchise. And not every industry is set up for franchising, so we'll talk about what are some of the industries you know are heavily franchised. Fast food. Not just fast food. Hospitality, restaurants, Fridays, that's, casual dining. What else? Hotels. What makes hotels so franchising so important for hotels?
So people know what they're getting.
Yeah, and as we talk through the class, you know what you're getting, but why do you know what you're getting? And part of that is because when you do a franchise, there's certain quality standards that you have to maintain. And that's one of the things that's very, very important. And as a franchisee, I wanted every other Hardee's to be really good, because if not, even though I had nothing to do with that store, it could hurt my business because you all have that common name. So that's one of the things we'll talk about. So is franchising right for your industry? So we'll talk about what is franchising, kind of the history, and what factors make it attractive for a specific industry. So it's doing business where a franchisor, and that is the parent company, license or trademarks tried and proven methods of doing business to a franchisee in exchange for a payment, a franchise fee, and a percentage of gross sales or royalty. So those are the two components of payment if you're going to do a franchise. There's a one-time upfront fee. That's called a franchise fee. It can be as little as $10,000 to $15,000 for like your specialty ice cream shops, up to $40,000 and $50,000, even $60,000 for something like a TGI Friday. So the more upscale franchise, and a lot of that depends on the value of the franchise. A lot of these young franchises, they can't charge a large franchise fee because the name doesn't have that much value. So that's what you need to evaluate in deciding on a franchise. Does that name have the value, and is the system going to be something that I can work in? So there's tangibles and intangibles, national and international advertising. And once again, national advertising has a lot to do with the size of your company. I know, and I'll use Hardee's and McDonald's as an example. McDonald's has how many stores? Thousands. So they contributed heavily to national advertising, and when you have a lot of people contributing into that pot, they did a lot of national advertising. Hardee's, we only had 2,400 stores. We focused more on regional advertising just because we couldn't afford to buy national advertising. And generally requires audited books. Why do you think the franchisor is going to require audited books? How does the franchisor get paid? Just told you. Royalty. Percentage of gross sales. So why are they going to want audited books?
Make sure you're getting paid everything they need.
Make sure that you're recording all the sales you do. Could I have sold, stuff and not run it through the register and just put cash in my pocket? And if I do that, do I pay royalties on that money? No. You got tax evasion involved in that too. I don't recommend doing that. But if you guys ever been to a mechanic or someplace and you pay them and they don't write you a receipt, they just kind of stick the money in their pocket, they're not recording the revenue. So audited books may be required because that franchisor wants to make sure that they get paid. And it also says failure of such tests typically involve non-renewal or cancellation of the franchise rights. And as we go through this course, one of the things to keep in mind, the last thing your franchisor wants to do is cancel your contract. Why? Why do I say that? How does he get paid? More business you do. So if I go out of business, that's royalty fees that franchisor doesn't get anymore. So that franchisor should be your business partner. They should be trying to help you succeed because their success depends on your success. Franchising in the news. Subway, largest franchise in the world. If you Google Subway, you will find a lot of bad press based on a lot of Subway's national advertising policy. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the first class, but I just heard today, what's the Subway ad they're running right now? What's the special they're running? Anybody hear it? No? The BMT 6-inch sub, drink, and chips for $4.50. Think there's a whole lot of margin in that? Not a lot. How about the $5 footlong? Think the franchisee makes a lot of money in that? Why does the franchisor want to run those deals? They get paid on sales. So Subway's in the news. It's $400 million. If you Google it now, it's up about $600 million sitting in a trust fund because money paid for advertising must be spent on advertising. So Subway is in a battle with the franchisees over who controls that money in that advertising fund. And here's the other little line you hear on after all these ads for McDonald's, Subways, at participating locations. What does that mean? Can they make you participate in a special? Absolutely not. What happens if you don't? You can lose money. We're not going to do the sale. But what else do we lose? Customers and credibility. If somebody comes to get that $5 footlong and I go, I'm sorry, we don't honor that deal. Next time they hear the special, are they going to come back to your place? No, because they know you don't serve the special. You guys ever gone to an airport or like a fast food place in a ball stadium or something? Do they run specials? Why not?
It's your only option.
Yeah, you have no option. So why would they want to give away food when they don't have to? So once again, with that national advertising, you are kind of locked in to what they do. Now, Subway does have representation, and it's the other thing that I would tell you to look at. If you guys want to do a franchise, who decides on what the advertising is going to be? My guy from Pinch a Penny that'll be coming in, they have a council of franchisees that they allow to help decide what some of the promotional items are going to be. That's a good system. If you're being dictated advertising, marketing strategies by your parent company, then you need to check into that well enough to know that it's something that you're going to be able to live with. In my situation, we had local representation of advertising. So my district market area, my DMA, was pretty much the state of Arkansas. The company had 12 stores. When I built my 2, it put the franchisees at 10, and we had a vote every month on the marketing strategy. Company has 12 votes. Franchisees have 10 votes. Guess what we did? Whatever the company wanted to do. But I knew that going in. Now, my goal while I was there, I was hoping that we got to 13 or 14 franchise stores. Because at that point, the franchisees would have then controlled the marketing. And that was in the license agreement that you would vote in your market area. But in our situation, the company controlled it, so I had to live with it. What other big franchises in the news right now? Huge. You guys, even college students should not have missed this one. Burger King. What's Burger King doing? Buying Tim Hortons. What's Tim Hortons?
Canadian breakfast restaurant.
Why would Burger King want to own a Canadian breakfast restaurant?
Control the North American market.
That's not the main reason.
Eating breakfast.
That's not the main reason.
Taxes.
What do you mean taxes?
Lower taxes.
Burger King is going to buy Tim Hortons and move their corporate office to Montreal, Canada. And so now they would pay on corporate taxes, they would pay the Canadian tax rate and not the United States rate. It's a savings of approximately 15%. Now, is what Burger King's doing wrong? Is that like unpatriotic? There's some people that think that. Are they doing anything wrong?
Being smart.
They're being smart? It's a big controversy right now. And there's a lot of people that are really kind of slamming Burger King. There's a lot of people that think Burger King's pretty smart to do it. So it's and it's going to grow their market also, for certain. But one of the things to keep in mind, though, is if you're a franchisee, would that affect you at all? It would not. Because if I'm in Tallahassee running a Burger King, I'm still going to pay taxes in the United States for a state of Florida. What it affects is that money you pay to the corporate office,
you're paying that to a Canadian company, not to an American company. So when they file their tax return, they now file that as a Canadian company. They're not an American company anymore. So, guys, a lot of companies are doing that. You guys know Accenture? You ever heard of Accenture? They're the largest consulting company in the world, larger than IBM. They were a spinoff from Arthur Andersen. It was Andersen Consulting, and they got to a fight about the name, so Accenture kind of split off. They are now, their home office is in Dublin, Ireland. Why? Corporate tax rate in Ireland is one of the lowest in the world. So companies are doing that. But Burger King corporate in the news this week just because, and I don't know that it's a done deal. I've heard they've caught a lot of flack and they're considering backing out. But do you know who stepped up to said they would loan Burger King $300 million to help do the deal? I need to listen to the news. Warren Buffett. Who's Warren Buffett? Jimmy Buffett's dad, right? Who's Warren Buffett?
1%.
Yeah, he is the 1%. He's the richest, one of the top 3 richest people in the world. You guys ever heard of a company called Berkshire Hathaway? That's what he does. He buys company and does high finance, but he's agreed to loan Burger King part of the money to do the deal if they want to do it. So, interesting to see. Kind of keep your eye on what happens. Oh, once again, Burger King franchisees, they sued Burger King several years ago for running the 99-cent double cheeseburger. Franchisee said, we can't make money selling it. So, one of the things that happened in my tenure with Hardee's too, once again, do your homework. When I started with Hardee's, great company, easy to deal with, and I think I told you they got bought out by Carl's Jr. We started actually, and it's called the IHFA, the International Hardee's Franchise Association, like a union for franchisees so that we would have one voice in dealing with the parent company. That's not a good situation. And somebody asked me when I first did Hardee's, is it a good company? I would have said, absolutely. You want to be in business with these people? They're great. A lot of support. Once Carl's bought them out, I would tell you not to have anything to do with them. It was a whole different culture dealing with the people from Carl's who are California-based, very sophisticated, versus dealing with the people from Hardee's who were down home kind of North Carolina people. So it was a whole difference in culture. All right, so 2 types of franchising, product franchising, distribute products under a corporate name, gas station, Shell, Amoco, Exxon, you can have those are franchises, and you do a product. John Deere is a product franchise. But then probably what's more prevalent and what you guys see more of are called business format franchising. That's when you use a corporation's brand name and operating system. Subway, Motels, Marble Slab Creamery, GNC, Nutrition, all those are called business format franchise. Hey, guys, these PowerPoints are on your blackboard. They're under the assignment point part. Okay, so the startup in the 1800s, business format franchising. German brewers set up exclusive contracts with tavern owners. And then in the 1850s, and you guys, Singer sewing machine. And back when I was a kid, every house had a sewing machine in it. People sewed their own clothes. And in the 1890s, Coke started franchising. And one of the things, Coke has kind of pulled back in and gone to bottling companies. So they're not, they've kind of retracted from being original franchise. Then in the early 1900s, retailing. Anybody ever remember hearing of Ben Franklin stores? When I was a kid, Ben Franklin was the Kmart or the Walmart. It was the 5 and dime. That was your kind of where you went for all your this kind of stuff you would go to Walmart for. By the way, Ben Franklin. Anybody know who the most famous franchisee of Ben Franklin was? Speaking of Walmart, Sam Walton started as a Ben Franklin franchisee. He got up, if you Google it, he got up to around, I think, 10 stores, and he got into a kind of an argument with them over where he wanted to open stores, and they wouldn't let him, and so that's when he left and decided to do Walmart. And I would say he made a pretty good decision. Fast food in the 1920s. Has anybody ever heard of A&W root beer? That's my earliest recollection of a fast food place, even before McDonald's, was A&W root beer. Does anybody know the format they use? It's kind of like Whataburger, where you had the order screens and the people came out either on skates or walked out and brought it out. That was A&W's original concept. And the restaurant started in 1935, and
services in 1938. Anybody know Arthur Murray's Dance Studio was a franchise? Also, tax prep now. Do you guys know that like H&R Block and Jackson Hewitt, those are franchises? It's one of the largest franchise businesses that there is right now. All right, so in the 50s and 60s, franchising takes off. McDonald's, KFC, Burger King. And there's two things that are credited with what makes franchising successful. Television advertising. How does that help franchising?
Let more people know about it.
Absolutely. And how about interstate system? Why did that make franchising lucrative? Well, yeah, you could travel now. And the same thing with the motel business. When you guys travel now, how many of you guys stay at a franchise hotel pretty much when you travel? You ever go to a place that's not a franchise? It's rare. Why? Go back to what somebody said. You know what to expect. Well, how do I know what I'm going to expect when I go to a Holiday Inn or a Hampton? Well, they have standards for their franchisees. My father also, after he sold the bank, opened a Super 8 motel. And it's, I guess, considered on the low end of the chain, but they had very rigid standards of inspection that he would get inspected once every 1 month or 2 months, and they would walk around, and if they tell you that you need to replace the carpet in this room, then you got to replace the carpet in that room. So they make you maintain a set of standards that gives you that consistency. Talk about McDonald's. You said you know what to expect. You guys go in McDonald's, are you expecting something really, really good? So why do you go there? You know what to expect. You know it's not going to be awful. You know it's not going to be bad. It's going to be okay. But you expect that. You don't expect something on the high end. So there's something to it's called managing expectations. There's something to managing people's expectations also. All right, so two things. Television advertising, once again, the word gets out. And once again, that goes also back to that thing as a franchisee you have to be concerned about. And like Subway is a good example. Subway has no area protection, meaning if I open one here, somebody else can open one down the block from me and Subway will sell them that right to do that. I had a 3-mile protection for my business. Subway has no area protection. So if you're in an area dominated by, let's just say one guy has 10 Subways in an area and they're all really poorly run, would you want to open a Subway in that place? Why? Yours might be very well run. But are you going to ride on the perception of those other units? Yeah, so you need to make sure who I'm doing a franchise with, what are their standards, and do they hold their franchisees to that standard?
Question.
Yes.
If you're a McDonald's, do you have area protection over like a competing restaurant like a Burger King or something like that?
No, they can't. You don't have any area protection. They can't. McDonald's can't tell you where a Burger King's going to come or where a Wendy's is going to come. Now, you need, and I'm not sure about McDonald's. I did read, and this has been years ago, that McDonald's got into a kind of an argument with one of their franchisees, and so they opened a company store real near him, put in one of these Cadillac indoor playgrounds, and basically drove him out of business. So you don't really want to fight with your franchisor. They have a lot more resources than you have. But what I know about fast food, they like a McDonald's doesn't mind having a Wendy's and a Burger King near them. They say that drives traffic to that area, and they're all going to get their share.
As far as like area protection, were you able to say in that 3-mile radius you had your Hardee's? Could you also franchise, say, a McDonald's or another competitor? Like be a franchise of two different places? It depends on what your license agreement says. I know some guys that had Hardee's that wanted to do some Sonics, because Sonics were real big out in the Midwest where I was. And in the Hardee's license agreement, it said you could not be a part of a competing business. So some businesses will not allow you to do that. Some will. So it just depends. Once again, that FDD, and I'll try to remember to bring that in next week, that franchise disclosure document, it's like the Bible of the deal. It's the contract that you're going to be signing. So you need to be very familiar with that before you sign your name on that paper. Yeah, but like the guy and he sold it, Mr. Henderson, the guy that owns the Fridays here,
in Destin, he had the Fridays, and then he had a Country Inn and Suites right behind it. He owned both of those, but one was a motel, one was a fast place, casual dining. So yeah, he owned both of those. So evidently, those license agreement did not prohibit him from owning other businesses, but I bet he couldn't have opened competing businesses. Because see, once you cut into your royalties if you have competing business.
If you want to sell it, if you want to sell your space, do you go through the company or do you sell it to yourself to someone? Do they have to go through the same requirements?
Yes, selling a franchise, whoever you sell to has to be approved by the franchisor, which is, so when I went to sell my units, who do you think I had contacted first? Other franchisees. That's your market. Why is that a good thing?
They're already approved.
They're already approved. Very simple process. So, and they know the business. Chances are somebody's going to want to grow, and you find somebody that, like the guy that I sold to owned North Arkansas. So basically he was growing in a contiguous territory.
So you have to only sell your land. You can sell just like one of them inside.
Yeah, I owned each one was individual. So, matter of fact, when I sold mine, the guy that bought me out only was able to buy my first two restaurants. My third one had not been open for a year, so it had nothing to do with Hardee's. The people that were loaning him money wouldn't loan him money without a full year history on that third restaurant. Okay, and now, but I don't know if I mentioned this or not, the climate for borrowing money has changed. The guy that bought me out was able to borrow 100% of the money. You're not going to find that today. And the guy that bought me out, within 4 years, both of my stores were closed down. It's poor management. I mean, and he kind of, as what Buddy explained to me, and I never really thought about this, but my buddy goes, you kind of put him in a bad position. I go, what do you mean? I left him great stores. He said, yeah, you had people's expectations raised to a level that if you guys go somewhere and the service is okay, you don't really expect it. You know when you go there, the service is going to be okay. But what happens when you've had really good service? What do you expect? Really good service. And so I was getting calls from my former customers in Arkansas going, could you come back here and take over this restaurant? No. Did you pay cash? Sorry. I'm out. But 4 years, both of them closed down. Which I hate it for my people, but I mean, he bought them and had the right to do with them. Well, what if he could have bought them and in the right area, taken that land if there'd been value to it and done something else? Once he buys it, he has a right to do with it whatever he chooses. But I find it hard to believe that he got his money back in 4 years. Now, he could sell the building and land. Now, here's the other part of it too, though. Just because, like most of these Subway owners, they don't own their land. A lot of people rent, and that's a perfectly viable option too. What's the advantage of renting?
Limited liability.
Limited liability. And your upfront costs are a lot less. But what's the advantage of owning? Yeah, when you sell it, the equity you build in that place, I'm able to sell the land and the building with it. So there's kind of a trade-off there. Neither one's right or wrong, but in Subways, most of the Subways are, and like Firehouse, they're in these strip centers. Those people lease their property. So your upfront expenses. But what happens when you sell and you don't own the land and the building? Then what are you selling? You're selling the business. And so, what's that business worth? That person that buys you out, they're going to have to pay $4,000 to $5,000 rent every month. So, one of the things we do in here, and we'll do is I'm going to go over a P&L statement with you. So, I'm going to show you kind of what your expenses are. At one of my actual stores, I've got my actual P&L. So, we'll go over that and kind of look at maybe the advantages as had I rented versus had I bought. And selling it, it made a huge advantage that I owned it. But I also, my first year that I had both of my stores, interest rates now, are great. You can borrow money for 3-4%. I was paying 7.5% back when I was doing my business. The first year I had both first two stores open all year. I paid $82,000 just in interest expense. That's a lot of money. I mean, but I couldn't have done the deal without, I didn't have cash to do it. So it's just an expense. It's part of doing business. And that's the other thing though, with renting, I would have had all that interest expense, but then when I went to sell, I wouldn't have had all the equity I had in my building. So it's kind of a trade-off. You can look at your own situation, see what you think is better. By the 70s, the fraud by franchisors led to federal involvement. We had the UFOC. Okay, that is now changed. I haven't updated the slide, but the UFOC, and once again, I'll bring that in next week. It's called the Uniform Franchise Offering Circular. Now it's been changed to the FDD, the Franchise Disclosure Document. It is 22 or 23 items that basically say, here's what I, the franchisor, will do. Here's what you, the franchisee, will be responsible for. So it's pretty much the agreement. And once you get that, and when my corporate guy's coming in, it's changed. It was either 10 and now it's 14, or it's 14 is 10. When they give you that book, you can't sign the deal without waiting 10 or 14 days, and he'll tell us what the current statute is. I want to say it's 14 days. So they make sure you have that book for 14 days before you can sign that deal, because they want to give you an opportunity to look over it. Now, did I read that whole book? When I bring it in, I'll show you. No. Should I have? Yes. But how do you get around reading the book? Talk to franchisees. They will tell you or point out the stuff that's in there that's of critical importance and that you want to know. But I really recommend reading the whole thing. Now, part of it, though, is a big section of it, probably a quarter of it, is names and addresses and phone numbers of all the franchisees. That's required that they give you that information. So I use that phone numbers to call a lot of people and ask a lot of questions before I sign on the deal. And I would very strongly recommend you do that. So the FTC is now involved, and so now we have some federal regulation in what franchisors can do and what they can't. All right, so today there's over 80 industries that are franchised, account for the majority of sales in tax prep. That's our Jackson Hewlett H&R Block. Between 2000 and close to half in restaurants and hotels. And you think about the restaurants you guys eat at, a large percentage are franchised. Anybody here back when Buffalo Wild Wings was down here on Tennessee Street? Okay, what happened to that place?
It was too big to seem like it was just real slow.
Okay, but why? And all of a sudden they changed their name to the Varsity, right?
I don't know. I think they moved down to Apple.
I think that's somebody else. I'm not sure. What I think happened, and I'm not absolutely 100% certain on this, but your license agreement, here's the other part of that book. You sign a deal for X amount of years. Mine was 20 years. I signed a 20-year agreement. Some of them are 10 with then 5-year renewable, 10 with 10-year renewables. At the time your license agreement runs out, you don't have to re-up. You don't have to sign that license agreement again. So if you were running your business, had food distribution locally, and could get everything, could you see where somebody might think, well, I'm going to be the same restaurant. I just don't need to pay BW3 6% royalties every month. Now that's fine. You can do that, but you have to take down their sign. So when you become the Varsity, even though you're still buying your food from Cisco, you're still buying your sauces, and everything's the same, what's the value of that sign? Is it worth 6% a year? And that's what, now me, with Hardee's, one of the things that they can do to keep you, we had several proprietary items that I couldn't get anywhere else. Hardee's biscuit mix, Hardee's rolled them out from scratch. You couldn't get that, you had to buy the biscuit mix from Hardee's. So there's certain things they can make you buy from them if they're proprietary. If not, they couldn't make me buy chicken from them. I could buy it locally. Tomatoes, I could buy them locally. Forks and knives and plastic forks, as long as they met their specs, they can't make me buy from them. But when I was doing my checking, buying from them was usually almost always cheaper because of the volume discounts they got.
For the years you would sign, would you get different royalties? Would you pay them? Would you get
Normally it's a set rate, and Hardee's was 4%. Firehouse Subs I know is 6%. When I signed, Hardee's had an incentive going, so there was an addendum to my license agreement. I paid 1% the first year, 2% the second, 3% the third, 4% the fourth. And then I leveled out. So think about it. I did $1 million, and so the first year I saved 3%. That's $30,000 that I saved in royalties by having that incentive.
Is that often? Is that how you
Just depends on how aggressive the franchisor is and how bad they want stores. Okay. Now for them it was a good deal because they lost $30,000 that first year, but they picked up a store for 8 or 10 years. So yeah, if that's what will get people opening stores, then you get that residual long-term payment each month. So it's really, as a franchisor, once you get people operating and all, it's really like a mailbox check. You get money each month. You got to kind of help them. You have to have staff people that check on them to make sure that they're meeting the standard. But your involvement with them really, if you have competent people, is really, matter of fact, I preferred when they didn't come around. Once I kind of got my feet on the ground, I didn't need them. All right, impact on the U.S. economy exceeds $1.5 trillion, and nearly 10% of our nation's private sector economy is franchised. It's a source of jobs for more than 18 million Americans, and if sales by U.S. franchise business were translated into national product, we would be the franchise industry in the United States would be the 7th largest economy in the world. That's how much business is done by franchises. All right, so industry factors that make franchise more attractive. The production and distribution occur in limited geographic markets. You cannot have centralized production, and you need a whole lot of outlets. And fast food's an example. You got to be in the market. Remember when travel agents were in vogue? Did it matter where a travel agent was located? If I pick up the phone and call and somebody's going to book me a flight, does it matter that they're in Tallahassee? Doesn't matter. So that industry would not be necessarily lend itself to franchising. But if I'm going to do, ServPro is a good one. You guys heard of them? They do water restoration damage. They got to be in they got to be in the city that I'm going to need their services. So that's one of the big things. There's over 31,000 McDonald's, 119 countries, and about 85% are franchised. Why do you think the company keeps some stores? And almost every company does. Firehouse, there's 30 stores in Jacksonville. Those are owned by the brothers, by the Sorensen brothers. Every other store is a franchise. So why do you think they own some companies?
for training or experimenting?
Yes. They can roll out like a new product, and I'll take it a step further. If you have company stores, my suggestion would be do like Firehouse and have them in one demographic. I was in
Jacksonville.
Yes, Jacksonville is pretty much, those are the only company stores. There was a place in Arkansas, two places where you had one company store and one franchise store in a city. I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't want to be competing against the company store, and generally the company stores were not run as good as the franchises because franchisees really have more at stake. So I would not want to be in where a company store was. But that's just once again. Oh, and McDonald's is a good example though. The stores in Tallahassee right now, anybody know who owns them? The company owns them now, but the company just bought them back. Anybody from Tampa? You guys ever heard of the Casper family? They own all the McDonald's in Tampa, and there was like the dad owned it, and so the son came here and took the Tallahassee market, and then the dad died, so McDonald's would not let them keep both markets. So they said, you got to pick. And so the son went back to Tampa, which is a much bigger market. And so the company bought back these stores. And they're looking for a buyer now. I had a guy from McDonald's come in last year, year before. They're really looking for a buyer, but they want to sell the whole market as one. So what do you think 12 McDonald's would cost? Now, me personally, if I'm a franchisor, and this is the other thing, if you guys are going to franchise a business, what's the advantage of letting people only have one or two? Think about Chick-fil-A. How many Chick-fil-A's can you own? And Chick-fil-A, oh, by the way, they're not a franchise. It's a little bit different. It's a license agreement. It's not a, by definition, franchise. But let's just look at them. How many Chick-fil-A's can you own? Now two. Why do you think they limit it to two? Quality. They want somebody with a financial stake in that store every day. What happens when you allow somebody to get 10 or 12 or 14 units?
Can't manage all of it.
it becomes a company because you have managers running the store, not owners. But what's the advantage of having multi-unit ownership? It's less work for the franchisor. You don't have to go out and find. So if McDonald's can sell 12 units, I don't have to go find 12 people.
But isn't there like a line of people waiting to buy Chick-fil-A's? Don't they have a high demand?
Okay, I'll go ahead and explain Chick-fil-A because everybody wants to know about Chick-fil-A. It's not a franchise. You sign a license agreement. The difference is Chick-fil-A buys the land, builds the building, so you have no upfront cost. That's huge. That's why there's a line. I had to spend $750,000 to open my restaurant. There's not a line of people wanting to do that. You pay a $5,000 deposit, and then instead of like royalties, the way their structure works, you make $3,000 a month as the proprietor of that place, $36,000 salary. Instead of taking 6% of sales, they take 15% of gross sales right off the top. Okay, but keep in mind, they bought the land, built the building, did the equipment, everything, and then you split the profit 50-50 after that.
Does that mean you'd pay them rent?
I don't think so. I think that comes out of that 15% that they take off the top. Instead of paying 6%, you pay 15%. So think about the couple of these stores, this one down here, I'm going to guess it's doing around $4 million. So 4 times 15, that's $600,000 a year. In 4 years, that's $2.5 million. They probably bought land, built building, and everything. I would bet it's a 4 or 5 year payout. It's huge.
Can you offer to buy the lands and the building?
No.
To get lower royalties?
No. Control. That you need them worse than they need you. There's people that would franchise Chick-fil-A in a heartbeat. Buy the land, build the building. It's about control with them. Not going to give up control. Okay, now, here's the other thing. If you want a Chick-fil-A, and I guess I can tell you now, I've been through the process with Chick-fil-A. When I moved here, teaching school, and just thought, what the heck, let's apply. So I applied. I immediately got a phone call with Pensacola and interviewed with an area guy. Passed that, was flown to Atlanta, and went through a series of interviews, whole day. It was brutal. I mean, it was 6 or 7 different people just firing questions at you. So, before I could meet with them, though, I had to go to Orlando and Tampa and spend part of the day with 2 different Chick-fil-A owners. So they make you do your homework before you meet with them. And why there's such a big demand is that structure. How many of you would like to have a job that I'm sure in a decent store is $150,000, $200,000? It costs you really nothing. It costs you a $5,000 deposit that you get back if you ever leave. That's a pretty good gig. They take over 2,400 applications a day is what they were taking. Yeah. So I passed through, was told I was approved, had kids in this public school here, I would not move. And that pretty much derailed my chances of getting. But we committed when I moved here that I would not move again until my kids got out of school. So now, let me explain the background. If I were all of you at some point in my life, I would apply for a Chick-fil-A. It costs you whatever stamp cost, or you can probably do it online. But let me tell you what you need on your resume. They used to hire just managers, promote managers from Chick-fil-A. So if you were an assistant manager, then they would promote that guy to a manager, getting him his own store. They're not doing that anymore. The guys I met with in Orlando and Tampa, one guy had sold insurance. He was an insurance guy. Forget what the other guy did. Never had been in Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A changed their philosophy. They said, you know what, we can hire people to run a store, and if we bring that store manager in, sure they know the store, but they're now looking for people who understand the broad, big picture of business. So if you're going to apply for Chick-fil-A, don't do it now. Go be successful in something else. Okay, that's one. What's the other thing you think they look at heavily on your resume?
Sexuality.
No, they have very strong views on sexuality, but I don't think they're going to, that's not what they look for. What's their basis of their organization? You're close. Religion, Christian. They are a very strong Christian organization. So the other part of my resume that was very strong, I do a lot of mission work and a lot of community service, and am very involved with my church. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you, if you want to have a Chick-fil-A at some point, those are the two things that they look for on that resume. And I think that's why I got called and why I was approved. So it's worth trying at some point. I mean, I don't know of one. Any guys ever had a bad experience at Chick-fil-A? I can't think of anything bad, and I don't know of one that's ever closed. Or it's just they do it right from the top, but that's from the top of the organization.
Do they sell it by grids as well, or do they do it by store?
No, the most used stores you can have is 2.
So would they, like for example, here would the guy own the one on campus and the one?
The guy that was at Monroe Street, he got the campus store. The guy that was on Northeast Capital Circle, he got the one at Bradfordville. Had they not changed the rule, I feel like I would have had a good shot at getting the one on Bradfordville. I live right up the road from it. Kids were in Child's High School. It was a natural fit for me marketing-wise, but they now allow you to have 2. But that's it. They cut it at 2.
Is it true that this Tallahassee or the Tennessee Street one is like one of the highest growth?
I've heard. I don't know factually that's true, but I've heard that the Tennessee Street store is one of the highest grossing.
It's slammed
I
till
live
3
across from there, and at like any time of the day, there's a huge line.
The one on Capitol Circle is incredible also.
Do they choose the location that it's going to be built, or do you choose?
They choose the location. You have no say-so in it at all. But now I'll say this, McDonald's also chooses a location and buys the building. Now McDonald's, they are a real estate company also. You pay them rent forever. But once again, what's the trade-off? My upfront costs aren't as much because I'm not having to commit to buy that building.
For fast food chains that are owned, like that have multiple companies, I think like Pizza Hut and something else are in the same. How does that work with the zoning? Do they have to?
It's called co-branding, and so you'll have a Pizza Hut / Taco Bell in the same place. In that case, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and KFC are all owned by PepsiCo, owned by the same parent company. So that's really not an issue. Other than that, I was asked if I would put a Hardee's in a gas station at one time. It's called co-branding, and so it's a little bit different license agreement structure. But once again, the guy that wanted me to come in was going to do the gas station. He wanted me to do the fast food. I was going to have to rent space from him. And that's why I really wasn't interested in doing it. It was going to be lower volume. It was going to be like a total freestanding store. It just wasn't attractive to me. But yeah, but if you go in with another place, then there are some synergistic opportunities where you can cut your overhead because you're splitting some of the costs. But you're also splitting the business. There's 2 brands. But you could do a convenience store. My buddy that was up in Missouri, they had a Hardee's convenience store where they had both of them. They had the convenience store and the Hardee's. So you can do that. You just have to get approval from, and you can get that approved very easily because those things actually attract people. Like when you're traveling on the interstate, how nice is it to stop and get gas and be able to eat all at the same place without having to go to 2 or 3 different places and get your convenience items. So those go in hand naturally. All right, so physical locations, this is more factors that make franchising more attractive. The physical locations are helpful to serving customers. So franchisees would compete with each other if services are provided at a customer's location, like carpet cleaning. Everybody's going to come out to you, but food, motel, customer's going to come to your location. All right, so local market knowledge is important to performance. Franchisees understand their own market better than a company-employed manager. Let me twist that a little bit. They don't necessarily understand it more. They have more of a vested interest to make it work. A manager makes $30,000, $40,000, and so if they do less business that day, many of them look at it like, well, that's good. I don't have to work as hard today because we didn't have as many customers. How does an owner a franchisee look at that? I lost business that day. So they are going to be more creative to try to get more business because, once again, every penny that goes out that window, everything that sales that I can make, it comes out of my pocket. A manager is going to draw a salary, and that's the strength of franchising. You get somebody in there that's committed to making money. And as residual claimants, Franchisees have greater incentives to develop products for local markets. Fillet of fish. Anybody know the story of how the fillet of fish was invented? You heard it? Yeah. In a town in Ohio, place in Ohio, a guy had a store in a certain area where there were a lot of people that were Catholic, and on Friday, the old traditional Catholics don't eat meat, so it killed his business at McDonald's. So he came up with the fish sandwich, which is something that they can eat. A manager's not going to go to that trouble to improvise to do that because there's no financial reward. That's the strength of the franchise. You are rewarded on your creativity. Now, there's also limitations, though. That guy couldn't just start selling fish sandwiches. McDonald's would have had to approve that. Story with Hardee's. There's some guys up in North Carolina. They own 300 and something stores. It's Nick Bodie, Mayo Knoll and Nick Bodie, I think are their names. Bodie Knoll's the name of their company. They had 300 something stores up in the Carolinas. When I was a kid, and you guys won't remember this, McDonald's, Hardee's, Burger King, they didn't serve breakfast. They just opened for lunch. Well, these guys up in the Carolinas and these guys are just a couple of good old boys that were just really shrewd business people. They knew that in the South, and I don't know if any of you guys, I don't consider Florida South, but it's not like the South. Talk about Alabama, North Carolina, Georgia. Those people, breakfast is huge. And I remember my parents were from Tennessee, and my grandparents were poor, but you had breakfast every morning, and it was ham and eggs and grits. It was a huge meal every morning. So Bodie Knoll went to Hardee's and said, hey, we want to serve breakfast. We're paying for this building. We have the overhead already. Why not add a third meal onto it, increase our sales? Hardee's told them no. Can't do it. We're a lunch and dinner chain. That's it. So Bodie Knoll started doing it anyway, and you've heard the thing, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. Got it going and started doing so well. Hardee's recanted on their original statement and said, oh yeah, I think the whole company's going to sell. And that's why one of the reasons that Hardee's was so successful and why I chose them, their breakfast in a southern town, I was doing $1,000 to $1,200 in breakfast. And that was at 99-cent sausage biscuits, $1.99 combos. So we were running a lot of traffic through there in the morning doing breakfast. But once again, you can innovate all you want. My buddy up in Harrison, Arkansas, wanted to put a little display in. It's on the way to Branson, Missouri. He wanted to put a little display in with stuff for Branson. Hardee's wouldn't let him put it in the store. So you are out there. You have to play by their rules. They have to approve what you do. But franchisees have incentive to do that. All right, local management discretion is beneficial. Franchising works in setting where negotiating with customers is important to sell. And like me, I tried to buy as much, like my produce, I tried to buy all that locally. Well, what's the advantage of buying locally? Economies of scale helps. What else? Do you think people do business with their customers? So if I buy from them, they're going to buy from me? I tried to shop local as much as I could in that town because I wanted those people to be customers of mine. And I wanted to, if I knew I had a good customer, I wanted to shop at their place. Just so you have that relationship. All right, the level of standardization and codification of the process and delivering the product or service is high. So what that says is it works in fast food because we can put together a proven system that is very easy to teach you to do. It's not hard. It's paint by numbers pretty much. It's easy to lay out operating procedures in a training manual, and it's easy to specify behavior in a contract. You will have certain cleanliness standards. And later on in one of the other chapters, McDonald's even tells you what kind of solution to use to mop your floors. It's in that contract. You will use you can't, if you like SOS, and they tell you use Pine Sol, you'll use Pine Sol. They can specify that. Brand name reputation is a valuable competitive advantage. To me, that is the most important thing. If I'd opened Bob's Burgers in Warren, Arkansas, I would not have been nearly as successful because that name meant something to people. Bob's Burgers, not so much. No value to the name. Plus, don't forget the buying power, especially with a big franchise, the buying power they bring, and the support that they bring. The operation is labor intensive. So franchisees are less likely to shirk, and in chapter 2 I'll go into more definition, explain what shirking means. But like Molly's Maid is a franchise. What do you think it means that franchising is attractive where the industry is labor intensive? Fast food, would you say that's labor intensive? It is. I had 40 employees on a payroll. You have a lot of people working. So why do you think having a franchise in something that has a lot of labor is more attractive than having a company store? Does that manager have incentive to be very efficient? Maybe some. Maybe he's getting a little bonus. But does that owner have incentive to be very efficient? Yeah, because every penny that goes out the door is coming out of your pocket. So anything that has a lot of labor issues with it, that franchisee is going to pay more attention to it because it's your money that makes it's going to make or break it. The company gets 6%, you get 94%. Who has more stake in that? And that's the conversation. Anytime I got in a disagreement with Hardee's, and I had several, I would ask this question: who cares more about this store succeeding, me or you? And they could not say me. They get 6% of sales, I get 94%, or 100% of profit after that 6% of sales. If it goes out, they're still got 2,399 other stores. I got just that one. So I cared more about it than they did, which is why I got into disagreements with them, because every unit's not the same, and there's stuff that happened in rural Arkansas that I needed to adapt to that they didn't have in other locations. But yet, because of that quality standard, because of that consistency, there's certain things that they fought me on. And so I just had to wait till they leave and start it back again. And then they come back and make me do it, take it down, and I take it down, and they leave, and I put it back up again. But you know what I knew, though? The last thing they want to do is shut me down, because they like that check I sent them each month. So you got to pick your battles. I'm not telling you, I'm not encouraging you that you do this to be antagonistic with your franchisor. I'm just telling you, you care about it more than they do. But some of them will get mad and draw the line, and that's not a good situation. All right, outlets are not terribly costly or risky to establish. Few franchisees can afford high startup costs and ongoing development costs. And you guys know Cracker Barrel? Those are company owned. Could probably be franchised, but think about Cracker Barrel. How many different business units are there inside that building? It's pretty extensive. You got a store, you got food. It would be very, very expensive to start a Cracker Barrel. And so those are all company owned. Their managers make terrific money, though. Managers will make over $100,000. But think about the scope of what you're doing. That's a huge job. Print and copy shops. How much would it cost to start a printing, like a FedEx, Kinko's, or whatever? Your startup costs with all that printing equipment and all would be almost astronomical for some individual to overcome. What about gyms? You guys know Gold's Gym's a franchise? What do you think makes that attractive to franchise? What's your startup cost? Equipment. But what's the beauty of that equipment? Can you tear up those weights? It's steel. So probably not. So it's a one-time upfront shot, and then how long can you use? Now, I know some of the equipment now you're going to have maintenance on the new stuff they have, but pretty much just the freeway places. You hardly would ever have to replace that stuff. You have a pretty good upfront, but then you get that residual coming in each month. So Gold's Gym is a franchise. So is there value to that? Any of you guys do Gold's Gym? Is there value to that name? If there were another gym that weren't Gold's, why do you pick Gold's?
Because all my friends go to Gold's.
Okay. Do you think, though, that value of Gold's, that name means something to you guys? It's a known name, I know, in the gym business.
Not really. Just close location. And you have the other options you go back home to Gold's.
Right. Okay, and there's usually several in one town, so if you don't go to this one, you can go to that one. So, yeah, that's advantage.
they get royalties on each person signed up, or as a whole?
Probably be on total sales.
I think it's total sales. One of our good friends, they own their audibles and they kind of use in their spa area.
Yeah, it'd be too hard to keep up with each person that signs up. Plus, that person pays each month, so it's going to be on total sales. But still, I mean, $15 a month is really cheap, but add it up when you got so many members. And what's their overhead cost? Very low. Unless they have trainers, and some of those people actually get paid on commission by doing workouts with people. So their overhead in that gym business is very, very low. You got to have a building. Generally, it doesn't have to be something really, really nice. And there's not many people in there working. Right? 1 or 2 people in there just kind of making sure that things are going good. Very low overhead. All right, the effort of the outlet operator is hard to measure relative to their performance. So franchisees, they call them residual claimants, meaning you get the value you create in that place. And they mentioned Marble Slab Creamery. Guys, be careful with these little kind of specialty type, retail type businesses. You guys think Marble Slab Creamery do a lot of business? About in January, and yeah, and there's yogurt, all over the place. So you have a very select audience when you do those type of places. I know it's somebody that owned a marble slab in Atlanta. You can't afford many employees. How many people do you ever see in those places? 1 or 2? What happens if you're the owner and one of your employees is sick or one of your employees quit? You got to go in. I know a friend of mine's daughter had one in Atlanta, had a hard time ever getting rid of it, ever selling it, just because you really can't afford to have any labor in there. And guys, here's the other thing I would tell you. If you're going to get into something and make $40,000 or $50,000 doing it, working 60, 70 hours a week, you're better off working for somebody else with less risk, no risk involved. So if you can't do something that's, in my opinion, pretty lucrative, I mean, I know it's pretty cool to be your own boss, but if you're not going to make any money, why take the risk? I'd rather work for somebody else. A lot less pressure, a lot less hours. All right, so franchising has a rich history over the past 150 years. It's a huge role in our economy. A variety of factors must be taken into account to see whether franchising makes sense for an industry, and rarely will all those factors point in the same direction. So, once again, do your homework. And one of the things that the last project that you guys will do, the group project, and I'm going to assign your groups. Here's one thing. If you guys know people in here and want to be in a group, there's 40 people. We'll do 8 groups, so we'll do 5-person groups. If you guys have anybody that you want to work with, let me know, and then I'll just fill in people to make that 5-person group. But one of the things you're going to do in that project is you're going to study a company that's not in Tallahassee that you think would work here. So if you get a chance, just go in and Google franchises, and there's all kinds of websites, and there's one that'll give you the top 100 franchises, and you guys can know whether they're in here or not. And then also, if you I'm going to have a workshop in class where when I assign your groups, I'm going to let you guys bring your laptop, kind of work on as a group, picking your place, ask me questions. But then if you can, contact that company, and, don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm graduating pretty soon. I'm thinking about doing a franchise, and would it be possible to get an FDD? And most times now they're electronic, so they don't have to reprint that book every year. And if you can get that FDD, that would be extremely helpful. Now, you might have to sign something that you received it, and if they ask you, are you serious? And, do you meet the financial requirements? You could say, no, but my dad and I have talked, so talk to your dad, so you're not telling a story. My dad and I have talked about possibly putting me into business, so I have some family backing. Okay, and just see if you can get that FDD. It would be helpful, but in most cases, you can probably find a lot of the information on the web anyway. Like, you can go Google Wendy's franchise fee and royalty payment, and they'll tell you what it is. There'll be websites out there. But if you get hold of that FDD, it would be really pretty cool. Plus, you'd get a really good look at kind of the workings of the company and what you have to do. Okay, have a good weekend. See you guys Tuesday.
I know